Notre Dame mollywopped Georgia from start to finish. Wasn't really close. And there wasn't a whole lot that Georgia could have done to make it close. Notre Dame is better than Georgia. And I recognize that is going to be a hard pill to swallow for Georgia fans and SEC fans as a whole. Notre Dame is better than Georgia. I think Notre Dame's better than Penn State, but we'll talk about that more next week. It was a butt kicking from the, I guess not from the get-go. Notre Dame made some mistakes that made it not a butt kicking. But once the snowball got rolling downhill, there was nothing Georgia could do to stand in front of it without just looking like a mosquito trying to take on a Mack truck. Notre Dame, once they got rolling, was a really, really, really difficult team to stop. And Georgia helped them by making some mistakes. Make no mistake about it. The Bulldogs had an active hand in making sure that was as bad of a college football playoff quarterfinal game as you could get outside of Ohio State, Oregon. It wasn't pretty. But there are some takeaways for the Bulldogs that they're going to have to deal with in the offseason that I don't know that they're going to want to have to deal with in the offseason. Because at the end of the day, if 2024 taught Georgia anything, it should be you're not nearly as good as you think you are. And if that goes for the conference as a whole, to tell you the truth, the SEC is not as good as it thinks it is. The SEC has been carried by the Georgia Bulldogs and the Alabama Crimson Tide for a decade and a half. And it certainly appears as if the rest of the sport has caught up to Georgia and Alabama, and you do not have the 1,000-pound gorilla on the block to contend with. And that hurts to reconcile with, rectify, and confront, but that has to be the takeaway for Georgia. You got to the top of the college football mountaintop and stayed there for a couple of years, which is really difficult to do. Now, I'm not taking anything away from what Georgia has done over the course of the last 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. What they have accomplished is impressive. And I would bet you damn good money that Kirby Smart has probably told his team, what we accomplished in the past does not matter in 2024. Does not matter in 2025. What teams led by Stetson Bennett and the whole host, and Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers and Nakobe Dean, what they accomplished means nothing for you. But there's still this kind of air of superiority from a team who finishes their season with 3 losses. As if kind of like they were entitled, they deserved everything that they got and then some. For instance, Notre Dame ran they brought the punt unit out, then completely brought their offense back out. And after the game, Kirby Smart's bitching because he believed that was against the rules. It's illegal substitution. And the head of the SEC referee says it's an illegal substitution. Well, Kirby, that didn't that's not a 14-point swing in a game. Okay, you lost because you had an inability to stop Notre Dame offensively, and you couldn't stop hurting yourself either. So that is that one's strictly on you. And I don't think Notre Dame did anything wrong. And even if they did, like, you got kind of out-gamed there. Your team messed up kind of over and over again in the worst possible situations. And that's not the hallmark of great teams. Great teams don't falter at the most inopportune moments. You get like a 4th and 2. All right, we're going to go for it. False start. 4th and 7, got to punt it. Fumble the football on a sack fumble inside your own territory, deep inside your own territory. Notre Dame gets a 4th and 1. Looks like they're going to punt it. They bring the offense back on out. They get you to jump off sides. You get a sideline warning from a walk-on at ESPN kept showing for No good reason. Georgia faltered time and time again when it mattered most. That is not the hallmark of a great team. And I think they have acted like they were a great team, that they were the favorites, that they were undeniably the team who were going to win the national championship. That's the aura they have exuded since the SEC championship game. And I understand it to a point, because if you win the SEC, that's going to mean something to whoever does it, right? They beat Texas twice. Texas is one of the 4 teams remaining who's got a chance to hold the gold trophy at the end of the year. So, yes, at your best, you are very good. But at your median, at your average, you were above average. And that's true for a lot of teams. And I think that's difficult to deal with when you have been undeniably the best program in the sport for 5, 6, 7 years. So Georgia has question marks going into the offseason, going into spring practice, figuring out the transfer portal here at the end of the window, or dealing with your roster construction is probably a better way to put it. Going into spring practice, after spring practice, there are question marks about Georgia. I don't think they should be an absolute slam dunk 100%. Yes, they are a top 10 preseason team in 2025. So Kirby Smart, to me, is kind of in that like Dabo Swinney situation where things went really well for you for a while. You lost 3 games in 2025, which isn't the end of the world by any stretch of the imagination. But the pressure from the fan base is going to be like, hey, you got to get this figured out, because we have had a taste of caviar, steak tartare, and lobster tails, and I'll be damned if we're going back to steamed white rice and grilled cheese, baby. We want to stay up at the top. And right now, Georgia is not at the top, and it was fully on display in the Sugar Bowl. So where do they go from here? I don't know that I can tell you the answer to that. But the questions are there. And if you ignore them, which I don't have a great feel for how Kirby Smart is going to handle losing the 3rd time, getting your ass kicked on national TV to a team that was like, well, they ain't that good. They lost to Northern Illinois. And they beat the brakes off of you. And it might not be fair for Georgia to be the ones that have to answer for this. Awful lot of SEC folks talking about how Indiana didn't deserve to be in the playoff, because you saw it when they played Notre Dame. They got their asses kicked. That's proof right there that South Carolina, Ole Miss, Alabama, one of those teams deserved to be in the playoff over Indiana. And then the team that wins your conference gets steamrolled worse. They got their ass beat worse than Indiana did. And you know what? South Carolina went out and they got beat by freaking Illinois. And Alabama went out and they got beat by Michigan. So it's not fair to put all that onus on Georgia. There's a lot of talk from the SEC about how their teams deserve to be in a playoff over teams from the ACC, from the Big Ten. What did they do? They laid eggs. Georgia got their ass kicked. Texas almost blew a 3-touchdown lead against a team everybody bitched got to buy. Alabama, who everybody said deserved a playoff spot, got beat by a 7-5 Michigan team. South Carolina loses to a not great Illinois team. When your big bowl season wins are against Duke and Iowa, you don't get to thump your chest about how great you are compared to everybody else anymore. And that's not fair to put all on Georgia. But I think you're going to see a lot of that come Friday morning and into the weekend of, hey, you guys told us how great you were, and you didn't back it up. And Georgia's kind of the poster child for that, getting your ass beat on the national stage. Georgia's not the only one that has questions. The SEC as a whole does too, and we'll figure out that when we return next week with the Daily Huddle. I appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. That goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow. No, I won't. I'll see you on Sunday for another episode of the Daily Huddle.